Why is this here? Are you the guest speaker today? I guess I am. It's your show.
Good evening. I'm sorry we're a little late tonight. We had a seminar late this afternoon with Richard Rogers, and it went a little bit late, and then we took everyone to dinner, and it went a little bit later. So I thank you for your indulgence. I'm sure it will be worthwhile. I want to tell you just a little bit about Rafael Soriano, our speaker tonight. He was born on the island of Rhodes. He came here at the age of 17. He was graduated from USC in 1934. And already at that time, he was pulling away from the then classical training that was in vogue in all of our universities. After working for a time in the office of Richard Neutra, he began his own practice, and in 1938, 36, he completed his first steel-framed house, the Gato House, and went on to build a body of work that has received national and international attention and publication. As a member of the second generation of Los Angeles architects after Neutra and Schindler, he was instrumental in keeping the spotlight on the development of modern architecture in Los Angeles. And last fall, when we presented our Modern Architecture Los Angeles Beyond Neutra and Schindler series, which many of you attended, those of you who were here when Rafael was a part of our first panel experienced some of his warmth and spirited personality, and know that we're all in for a great treat tonight. And if Rafael is ready, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to present Rafael Soriano to you this evening.
I have to be corralled. Thank you, darling. Oh gosh, look at that. I don't think you're going to like what I have to say. You know, I was in an airport about a couple of years ago. I saw a grandmother, I think it was, holding a little youngster about a year old or something like that. And the grandmother was pointing to the airplane. He said, "Look, darling, a bird. Look, darling, a bird." And then all of a sudden the little baby said, "Dog." Dog. I said, no, that's a bird. Again, the little baby kept saying, "Dog." And of course, the people who were in the audience roared from laughter. You know, I kept thinking, I said, imagine how we keep brainwashing our kids with all these falsehoods. It's true, isn't it? Now, why call it a bird? Because the grandmother thought so. This is occurring all the time. You know, I keep, for the last 40 years now, even when I was in school in 1938, I used to question all this nonsense we were learning. But I mean nonsense. I remember we have to do art, make all these drawings of the acanthus leaves and all that stuff. And of course, anybody with dexterity could make them beautifully. But I was wondering, what good are they? What do they serve? Nothing, really. Because the people did it in the past, we still think they are great, meritorious things. And you know, all these years I've been listening and seeing more and more decadence is occurring. Not only in the arts. Of course, the arts, now everything is arts. The art of cooking, the art of sewing, the art of painting, the art of architecture. Everything is an art, isn't it? The cinema, music. I have a collection of all this trivia which has been bombarded daily through the television broadcasts, through the radio broadcasts. You have no idea the wealth of material I collected, which I will show you here in a minute. And I still think that instead of going with a little progress, we're going backwards constantly. You know, I'm pretty certain that at the time of Bach, the babies were never imprinted to love Bach. any more than the children today have been imprinted to love jazz or pop in their mother's placenta? Are they? And yet, what do you hear all around today? All this garbage that's been perpetrated as music, which is really not, it's just noise. Now, some of you youngsters will say, oh, well, hell, this is our age, our era. I think this is a lot of nonsense. It's no age, no era. Every era has its serious quality, and there are those who can really remain at that area of seriousness and those who are shallow. Unfortunately, the big tragedy is that they all love to be entertained. I think the biggest tragedy, excuse me, I get dry because we ate something at the Italian restaurant with garlic. They all want to be entertained. Everything is an entertainment. Everything. To be entertained in architecture, to be entertained in music, to be entertained no matter what you do, it's an entertainment. I wonder if life is really that. Now, let me show you something. I want to start here very quickly for you. I hope you can hear it very well. If not, you let me know. Let's see. She had to sneeze. You notice that? Hey, hey, you didn't hear it very well. Now, this is from Paisiello, the beautiful Paisiello, this beautiful barber of Seville. But actually, within that sneezing, I'll tell you what, I'll start it all over again. Listen carefully. See? Is it coming all right? Let me see what I have here. Okay. Now, already we start the corruption. This was something to clear our ears of all this garbage. Now, listen. This is a teacher of opera. Listen to what happens. You see, that poor girl, she was told, be more expressive. Do this, do that. Now, how could you express in musically, any feeling at all. No, you can't. I can prove anybody to disprove this. Because this poor girl was already disturbed because she said she couldn't make it, so she said, you come in more with this feeling and all that. So how could the teacher translate to this opera student to come in with this type of feeling? Of course, you notice how everybody laughed. She was disturbed. She couldn't come in, and she did. So now listen what happens after that. This is something else again.
10 Wolsey could not bear to watch her sister's cankerous care, yet not to share.
Can you hear me?
She night and morning caught the goblin's cry.
Come buy our orchard fruits. Come buy. Come buy.
Besides,
That's another disease. You see, all this little... Absolutely. Now, you know, this is not just in music, if you please. This is all over, all our activities are permeated with this nonsense, this mockery of life. And this is what we start from childhood until we die. We are constantly bombarded with these falsehoods.
the brook along the lane, she heard the tramp of goblin men.
That's of the sugar.
Ah, yeah. Uh-huh.
So what shall we do about the masked grandma, Doctor?
Catch her. Kill her. Shoot bullets through her.
All squad cars, continue search for masked grandma. Wears polka dot mask, hangs out in supermarkets near Mary Ellen's, the jam with the polka dot top.
This is just to clean your ears. This is a lovely activity, as you notice with music. No description here. It's an activity. And that's the only thing that makes sense. A mockery doesn't make sense. Sugar, polka dots, grandma, all this, nothing. This activity of music, as you see here, this is an Argentina little dance, if you please.
Right now, which I think is the only true revolution that we have.
This is an architect came to my office. He says the only true revolution we have is the beatnik revolution. He was telling me about it. And now you'll see what the beatnik revolution says.
So you think it as being a sort of an incomprehensible statement which the poem will justify. On top of that, if you know me, I pronounce you an ignu. Ignu then to be defined. Ignu knows nothing of the world. Christ overflowed with trembling semen for many a dead aunt. He's a great coxsman. Most beautiful girls are worshipped by Ignu. Hollywood dolls or lone Marys of Idaho.
Hair, come back, hair, come back. I want to grow sideburns. Oh, I thought surely this 1959 of now, that I need no longer bite my fingernails, but have handsome gray hair to show how profoundly nervous I am.
Don't laugh at this because this is very serious. If this was done in a private company, in a little gathering of few people, it's all right. I would say do whatever you like. But listen where this thing occurred in 59.
Be hair that must be plucked from soup, hair that clogs the bathtub, hair that gets in the eyes of a bat, disgusting hair. To turn their platinum cakes, Veronica Lake, Truman Capote, Ishkabibble, Messiah's, Paganini, Hawaiians, Poodles. It does that. I gotta get warmed up, you know, like, so I could break up. But that wasn't so crazy.
Third, Beatniks at the University, an informal poetry reading and discussion by Allen Ginsberg and Gregory Corso, recorded recently when it was given before a student audience at the University of Chicago.
University of Chicago, if you please.
Who do you think it was?
Listen.
It's Sylvester the cat. The other lady that called was partially right, because Tweety Bird is in that cartoon, but he isn't the one that says it.
He's the one that sprays you, though.
No, the kitty cat does.
The birdie does.
No, the birdie doesn't. The
The kitty cat. Sylvester sprayed.
And the other one is the one that the birdie says, I thought I saw a pussy cat.
Oh, that's Belle. Yeah, that's they're in the same one.
That's right.
Tweety Pie and Sylvester the cat.
That's right. And Sylvester's the one that suffers from succotash. And anyone with preschool children who had the television set should know that because they're on all the time.
All the time, indeed. Well, thank you, ma'am.
You're very welcome. Bye.
You know, I stay up all night listening to things like that to pick up material. I have tons of tapes that I picked up for years and years. You have no idea. From year to year, it's becoming worse. Worse. More degenerate. However, right now, I will let you hear something that many of you, I'm sure, will understand and appreciate. You intellectuals, particularly. Listen.
I think it's very interesting. We have a program every
Okay.
afternoon at KCBS called...
Listen.
If they tear a hunter through, if they tear through a hunter, if they tear through a hunt and a hunter, if they tear through the different sizes of the six sizes of the six which are these: a woman with a white package under one arm and a black package under the other arm, and dressed in brown with a white blouse. The second, St. Joseph. The third, a hunter in a blue coat and black garters and a flat cap. A fourth, a knife grinder who is full-faced, and a very little woman with black hair and a yellow hat, and an excellently smiling, appropriate soldier. All these as you please. In the meantime, examples of the same lily. In this way, please, have you run. What do I see? A very little snail, a medium-sized turkey, a small band of sheep, a fair orange tree, all nice wise are like that. Listen to them from here. Oh, you did not have an answer? Here? Yes.
What do you think that was? Who it was? That was Gertrude Stein, that you people adore, reciting herself. Of course, Gertrude Stein, you know, if you said, oh my gosh, she's a great poetess, yes, that's what you think, isn't it? What has she said that is any more incomprehensible than what has happened before with all this garbage in the radio? That was an ode to Valentine, an ode to Sherwood Anderson. I took the title off so you won't know. You see, all this verbiage, all this jungle of words. You're trying to be very funny with this. This is nothing else but entertainment, isn't it? Nothing contributed to intelligence, to understanding, to knowledge. None at all. And yet, all these become great accomplishments of our civilization. We accept everything. I think our civilization is full of garbage. All over our museums, our universities. If I were a dictator, which I'm not, I will take all the humanities, junk them. Really. Because they have been doing more harm than you think. Listen some more here.
Can they hear it?
Can you hear all very well? No? No? Oh my goodness. It's in the loudness? Well, don't worry. Even if you understood, you would not understood anyway. Okay, let's see what happens here. Let's see, do you understand this? See if you understand that. Can you understand that? Now, I told you we start corrupting our children with all this trivia by teachers who have been schooled in the same knowledge, but the children are not that dumb, really. As a matter of fact, I have a research that I've been conducting all over the world. I have audiovisual questionnaires this big that I have from Tokyo to Mexico to Canada, any place I've lectured. I have thousands of these questionnaires to prove to me that human beings are capable of reasoning and understanding when something is right and when falsehood exists, if you put them to make a decision quickly. But if you let them go to their archives and bring back to ruminate their nonsense, then they give you nonsense. Now listen how these children are brainwashed, and look how intelligent these kids are.
Shall we sing it once more? Everybody. A quarter to cross the bridge, across the bridge. I like that song. And here we are in San Francisco. Can you hear them? One is going beep beep, and another one is going beep beep. And there's another horn going beep beep. And another horn going honk honk. Yes, another going honk honk. And one going quack quack. A car going quack quack. Well, maybe if there's a dog in the car would seem to go bow wow. That's a funny idea.
These are beautiful people, aren't they?
Anyway, I want you to look at all those tall buildings. Do you see them? They're sticking right up into the sky. Don't they look nice? Listen.
You see, there is one guy there who says, I don't see any of those buildings. In other words, it's all imaginary. They're not going anywhere. I picked this from one of the educational television stations in San Francisco. And you find these children, most of them will say, oh yes, they play because that's where, but there is enough of these individuals who say, I don't see anything there. And I don't like that song. Now, I'm going back at the time when I used to live in Leland Way, which is Hollywood and Sunset. I think it's Highland and Sunset Boulevard. That goes back almost 40 years. The city of Los Angeles, the Board of Education had a teacher in the summer to teach children, so as not to go to waste. You see, in the summer teacher, they had a teacher over the radio teaching them something. Now listen to this. I beg your pardon, this is still from San Francisco, but after that it will be that I won't even stop. Here.
A fine artist hanging on the wall. Lisa Goldberg heard the music, and then she drew this picture.
Now, Lisa Goldberg heard the music and drew this picture. Is that possible? Ask yourselves that. Years ago, I was teaching at California State Polytechnic College in San Luis Obispo. Now, you will see in a minute slides, which I will project. They all challenged me, said, that's it. This is impossible to describe with the arts anything, except the activities of what you're doing with the arts. You never can describe a feeling of any kind. This is all completely a myth, if you think you can. Now, she is trying to brainwash these children with this, but look what she says to them, how to describe.
This is what the music told her to draw.
What the music told her to draw.
Now let's listen to today's music for just a moment, and then perhaps we can decide how we would like to draw to this music. Maybe you like to draw long lines, or short lines, or wiggly lines, or circles, or boxes, or maybe you want to use black, or red, or blue, or pink. Let's listen, and then we'll talk about it. And we sing about a butterfly.
Excuse me. Now, this is the one I picked in Los Angeles. It's a little foggy because of the reception and the radio and the equipment I had.
Come to make our voices paint a sound picture of the most beautiful butterfly we can imagine.
Paint the most beautiful picture of the butterfly with our voices. Can you do that? It's impossible, isn't it? I mean, this was through the Los Angeles Airways years ago. Well, how much of this we're going to do? Let's see. Okay, now.
Now, for the all play together, here's the whip.
Some musicologists describing music and telling, here's the whip, as if that's what music is. This is the same activity as a couperin, isn't it? It's not a description at all. Life has to be real, has to be active. Never a drawing of this activity, never. But let me tell you something else. All of a sudden you will see here a scientist describing the bird song of one of those birds by giving some of our own translations of metaphors, which is a falsehood. Listen to this.
And the maple is another song, given by a bird that is even more difficult to see, the warbling vireo. The song is not broken up into phrases like the red-eyed vireos, but is given in sentence form, a somewhat hesitating warble that ends with a rising inflection, as if it were saying, iggly, piggly, wiggly, pig.
Now, isn't that beautiful? This is how we can confuse the kids. They immediately will know iggly, wiggly, pig to understand about the bird is singing, and it doesn't do that at all, is it? Okay.
States on a UNESCO.
From a UNESCO fellowship, a musician comes from Israel to study electronic music. Listen what he does.
Fellowship for Research Studies in Electronic Music. Science, or we may better say technology, found his counterpart in music. It started with a 12-tone roll, which came as a savior in time of complete degeneration of the major-minor scale system.
By Dr. Tal.
Listen to what it does.
Composed and recorded in Israel.
Listen. This is international money wasted for somebody to come here to study electronic music. Isn't that sad? Now, this is not only there from Israel, but listen to another one from Poland. They call that punctualism. You know, like
Here next is a sample of Polish punctualism. Henryk Górecki's epitaph for choir and instrumental ensemble.
Listen. This is a big sin, if whatever sin is. I will cut it very short. I have lots of other things because we're going to show some slides to be in concert with this. But I want to show you a couple of more things here to show you to the extent that all these professions in these so-called humanities are contaminated with this garbage. Really. Now, just the punctualism. This is to clean our ears a little bit. Even if you don't compose anything, if you are natural, even in the rehearsing in an orchestra, it sounds million times better than all the punctualism and these electronic compositions that you heard before. This is an orchestra rehearsing. Listen to this, how much more harmonious it is. You see, that's listenable, isn't it? Now listen to what a biochemist tells us about us. You know, we human beings are full of activity. We are not mockeries of life. We are not just a line drawing of a human being. Every speck of you is doing work. It's an activity. Listen to what this biochemist is saying about you.
Biochemists have done a beautiful job in spelling out chemical reactions. And then they have to fit the enzymes and the chemical reactions back in the cell and ask, what does the cell do? A muscle cell transforms chemical energy into mechanical energy. A nerve cell transforms chemical energy into electrical energy. The stomach transforms chemical energy into osmotic work. The kidney, of course, is the organ par excellence for transforming chemical energy into osmotic work.
Okay. This is a historian, a professor, Dr. Burchard, I think it was. He was the great god of architecture, of history. He used to advise all the architects what to do. And he's telling, look what he's saying. South of the border.
So there where we should look. Not that it always comes off well, I think. And of course, we have much too much money, as our friends correct us know. But nonetheless, it is true that more experiments are being done. They're bolder. They use color more freely. They're using sculpture more freely.
You see, they use color, they use sculpture. In other words, it's all contaminated. The architecture cannot be taken by itself. It has to be always mixed up with sculpture and architecture, always. Always. Everybody, all the magazines, they all say it has to be related. Instead of thinking, what is architecture, what is sculpture, what is painting, why did they make painting in the past and sculpture in the past? Why? There are a lot of reasons you will see in a minute. Now, one more. This is for an Italian architect, Rogers, who came over here. Look what he says about alto. Let's listen what he said.
While Miss van der Rohe prepared the first synthesis rationalizing organic architecture, also after more than 20 years has made rational architecture more organic.
Okay, I will stop there because there are a lot of other things. I was going to shorten this up, but unfortunately they were making a lot of noise in Tiburon office that they were doing construction where I couldn't shorten it. So I'll start there. We'll show some slides. Now, rational architecture more organic, organic architecture more rational. Juggle the words any way you want it. What does it mean? Nothing, really. Can we have some slides now? Is that water for me? Thank you. Merci. Can we turn the lights off so we can at least see? Do you have a pointer or something? Pas le pointeur, madame. Diona, you look beautiful. And Helen, you look adorable too. And all my dear friends, I love you. I'm not excluding the rest of you who I don't know. Thank you for coming. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. It's about time you prepare this for me. Thank you, darling. Let me take... I had some beautiful music here, but then maybe at the end we conclude that. Now, what I was telling you is this. Look, what can you describe with this natural plant and this phenomenon, which is the sun? What can you say about it? You know, in Spanish, we have a saying. My mother used to say this marvelous word of wisdom, which we used to use it almost without knowing. Until I grow and live and work, the meaning of it came clearly to me. They said, ni escrito ni estampado se puede escribir. It says, not even in writing or in painting can you describe something. And that's true. Can you describe that? No. Can you describe this? No. Exactly not. Next, please. Now, the ancients made this. These are the creation of the world. The English made it. The Indians made it. About the world. That's their concept of the world in drawings. Are they really describing anything? No. Of course not. Have you learned anything from that and from this? No. But we learn a hell of a lot from the sun with our new computerized instruments we have today. But never from here, never from there. Next, please. Yeah. Now look, the Bauhaus, I blame the Bauhaus for a great deal of the sins we have today in architecture. Yeah. Contrary to what people say, all the professors and teachers, of course, that's sacrilegious to talk against the Bauhaus. But I can tell you, most of our attitudes sculpturally, that we must have more sculpture, more painting, came from the Bauhaus. They were teaching sculptural things from the Bauhaus. There it is. And they had Kandinsky to make drawings, to study geometry, analytical drawing. What can you draw? What can you learn from this kind of what do you call that, dribblings or jugglings of things like Gertrude Stein's words? Next, please. Nothing at all. Now, of course, you know, Le Corbusier made a beautiful statement. The dimension, the way you will learn to design architecture by these dimensions from the belly button. He had all kinds of centimeters and so on. I didn't like this drawing of Le Corbusier. I brought you something from Hawaii. Yeah, this adorable girl, much more beautiful. But one thing Le Corbusier forgot, that if this lovely girl lowers her hand, where are we going to put her belly button? That's something Corbusier never thought about it. No. The Greeks made also dimensions. This was a dimension. You find this in some of their sculptures, yes. But it's a limited dimension for their time. Today it doesn't serve at all. Next, please. Good. Now, Ronchamp, everybody says, oh, great thing. Yes, indeed. Look, in the words of the master himself, of Le Corbusier, the shell of a crab picked up on Long Island near New York in 1946 is lying on my drawing board. It will become the roof of the chapel, 2 membranes of concrete side. This is what he drew, and this is what happened from Ronchamp, and this is the crab. Now, can you learn from that? Can you really design that way architecture? It's a big sophistry, isn't it? Next, please. I've seen in Tokyo everybody doing little Ronchamps, even if it was a little chamber music this big, with the same type of windows. Now, this is, I think, clay. La tige croît vers le soleil. The twig grows towards the sky. But look at the way a twig grows, really. This is a plant. What is it telling you by doing this? Nothing, really. Except if you want to spend several $100,000 and hang it on your wall, you can do so. But then this grow free. It doesn't cost you much. You can plant them outside in your garden. This is much more exciting, isn't it? More natural. This is the thing. We are used to artificialities. We are skipping all nature that is all over us, all around us. We don't want to look at it. We want to see things like that, not that. And yet these are much more exciting living, really. Next, please. I was in Tokyo at the World Design Conference. And I made a very interesting, stinking lecture there, which, of course, most of the members, of course, were shocked. Except the chairman of the Congress said to me, "You saved the conference, Mr. Soriano. You saved the conference." It was very charming. Yes. Now, this is an Australian delegate. I was photographing these Indian delegates who came outside. They were at the hotel. And they're so lovely and simple. And then this one came out, and I said, "Oh, may I photograph you?" She said, "Oh, I know what you're going to do, Mr. Soriano. You're going to show me as what not to do, isn't it?" I said, "You are absolutely right." Yeah, because she had this horrible taste of clothing, of dress. Yep. Next, please. I was lecturing at Yale. Yes, I really was. And all of a sudden, I got off the class. The first day, I saw a young man who was not an architect, but he was a drama major, I heard afterward, lying on the floor, writing with his left hand, looking at the statue. I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm writing about art of the technique that Moore used in making the folds of this clothing." I said, "Really?" I said, "Will you come to my office?" So I have a tape recorded. And this is what happened, briefly. He says, "Well, you know, I was bluffing," and he read me what he wrote. He says, "I was supposed to read a book about this, and I didn't have time, so I was just making it up." Falsehoods. Now, this was an Australian co-ed, a very beautiful one, as you can see. I just asked her to pause for me to show you the difference. How we abuse, we misuse our beautiful women. We make a mockery of a woman, and this boy said, "I don't know, the face looks like a bird, it doesn't look like a woman's face." And yet he says the body looks like a woman. And so you can see, but a human being is never that size to begin with. Look how lovely this is. And of course, the Greeks misuse women too, to hold in temperature. Do we use women for that nowadays? No. Next, please. Now, this is already, I told you, we start right from childhood, degenerating our kids. This is the daughter of a client of mine years ago in Belvedere. There's a lovely face. But already, all of a sudden I saw her one day with this, and said, "What is that?" "I'm a rabbit." Now, is a girl a rabbit? No. But the child never asked to be that. The mother, I'm sure, did that. Invariably, the mothers do that. The grown-ups do that. Children don't. Next, please. Okay, you remember the old culture, the change, all these great things in San Francisco, all these messiahs that were going to change the world for I don't know what. And here they are. You heard some of the poetry, the hair and all that stuff. These are the guys. Full of nonsense. Next, please. Nothing comes from that. Nothing any more than things come from this direction. The things that will come will be from these accomplishments of our brain activities, of our scientific knowledge, which is part of human beings. not through the misconceptions, these mobiles that we hang in our buildings to make them look appealing, because we don't succeed architecturally. We depend on mobiles and sculptures and paintings, naturally. If they were done properly, all right. And here's an interesting instrument. Now, why have pieces of mobiles and sculpture when we already have in our own civilization? This is, in Canada, I saw this. This is an instrument which converts direct current into alternate current. Look how lovely that is. I mean, this does work. The others don't do any work. They are parasites. Next, please. Yes. This was in Brasilia. Can you imagine what this is? These are for the pigeons, a house for the pigeons. Yeah, they love the pigeons, absolutely. There's a building they did for pigeons. There are hundreds of them. They put corn around it. It's a marvelous thing, you know. They left this for the pigeons. Okay, call it that. Now, the Museum Modern Art has put a propeller of one of those old planes, you know, the piston planes, as a sculptural thing. And they had a Brancusi, the bird in flight. Both of them are full of sophistry again. This doesn't make sense as a piece of sculpture because it doesn't mean that at all. The only time it makes sense, the propeller, when it's doing work. With a motor, yes. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. If you put it on a table as a piece of sculpture, you call it that. Again, this is another piece of nothing. And the bird in flight, okay, if you want to hang it on your table or put it on whatever they spend money. Next, please. There we are. You know, I'm very curious. A few years ago, there was a doctor in Marin County. He advertised as Semantic of the Arts. He was teaching. At the time I was married, and my wife said, darling, you know, they're going to do that. I said, well, let's join the class for 3 weeks, and I recorded all the sessions. Now, I'll ask you, what's that? Anybody can guess? Huh? Please tell me. What? Clay. Clay? What does that mean? Anything? Any symbol? How about that one? How about that one? Anybody? Any guess, please? Can opener? I'll tell you what it is now to make the story short. This PhD, great semanticist, of course, semantics, from the Greek, semiosis, to have the clarity of the meaning, isn't it? To communicate clearly, of course. And here he comes in one day, he gave us a piece of clay to each one of us. And I think the class was about 20. They were all teachers, if you please, grown-ups, except myself. But he says, make your concept of your religion. Yes, with a piece of clay they gave us. And this was the concept of somebody's religion. You see, I have this on a tape from every one of them. Nobody could guess or even think of what this person really meant. Now, what was that? That was another session. Draw your classroom. And this was the classroom of some girl by the name SMA or whatever. Can opener, Madame said over here. You see how difficult it is, what I've been telling you before? It's impossible. The old Spanish saying, ni escrito ni estampado se puede escribir. It says you cannot describe anything even in raw words of writing or in painting. Any real activities of life, never. Next, please. Because you never succeed in communicating with anybody any more than this. Birth of liquor design. One thing is certain, I hate simplicity in all its forms, and yet that's the only natural thing is simplicity in life. Otherwise it wouldn't be structurally viable or working. Well, this a demented person, Bosch, did that years ago. People buy this, will pay hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Next, please. It's interesting. You did? Where? Washington University? Well, did you learn anything?
That's why I'm here.
I'm glad. Well, I lectured there. I was there for 6 months, and all of a sudden I saw some kids doing construction work with blocks of wood like that. I said, what are you kids doing? One of the professors was teaching them, and I said to myself, what a waste of time, really. Then one day I used to have the privilege of going to my jobs. At the time I had a job in Hawaii, and I used to fly beautifully from there because I hated the whole venture of what they were teaching. But anyway, so one day they had this piece of sculpture given by one of the ex-professors as a present, made of sheet metal. He concocted, they had it there. A few months later, 2 months or something, the kids made this parody, and then I took these photographs. You can see. Now this, what do we have here? You remember last time when we had the debate with, who was it? Harris and a couple of other architect colleagues of mine. And I took issue, I think, with Frank Lloyd Wright. And with Schindler, I myself did not have much agreement because I thought it was too much towards the cubism. And I'm right, you see. This is a cubistic sculptor. And look at Schindler's activities, the way he was going, the direction of Schindler. Now, this is something I wrote. Nature has an elegant process of order and not this confused grossness. I think there's something to that, to reflect. Next, please. Now, remember the old hollyhock bush? I think Harris took a great deal of issue with me at the time. I remember they were insulted that I took issue with Frank Lloyd Wright. Don't worry, I used to know Mr. Wright very well. In fact, he knew I criticized him. Now, if you stretch your imagination 1 billion times, you couldn't possibly guess that this is a hollyhock bush. And this is the hollyhock bush, the way it grows. Is that a hollyhock bush? You remember what I said? You cannot translate anything living into this painting or words. Remember that again. It requires repeating. Now, it's impossible to do this. I remember at the time when I was lecturing in Los Angeles, Mrs. Schindler, who is not with us, I heard, unfortunately, she jumped from the audience. Mr. Soriano, I know. I said, I don't know what that is. She says, Mr. Soriano, I know. This is the hollyhock bush because Mrs. Barnsdale loved so much that Mr. Wright wanted to please Mrs. Barnsdale, therefore he did that. Well, did he succeed? Next, please. There you are. See, I'm not lying to you. I used to know Mr. Wright very well. See? And in fact, I challenged him 2-3 times to really discuss this. At the time, this was at the Mountain Region Convention of Architects in Phoenix, Arizona, where I was the speaker. And this is Harris, and this is Arthur Gallion there. And I remember I said to him, I said, Mr. Wright, now that the body of architects are here, let's go in an interesting discussion. Because he heard already that I criticized his buildings. He says, you criticize my buildings again. I said, well, not your buildings. I said, your concepts I really take issue with. And immediately changed the subject. He said, Mr. Soriano, look what, I didn't say Mr. Soriano, he said, Soriano, look what they did to my view, pointing to 2 transmission towers across in the distance. I said, well, the towers look like your sign pointing Taliesin West. He says, I don't mean the towers, I mean the wires straying across. You could hardly even see the wires. He was quite a showman, a dramatist. Yeah. Now look, this is at Yale. I was giving them a problem and we were discussing. You see this? This is a dog or something, whatever it was. Now, again, we went into this discussion, well, why can I describe? If I want to draw a dog, why can I draw a dog? I said, yes, you can draw a dog. Why not? If you want to just keep it in your own quarters. But if you make it a public issue, then if you make this design of the dog, then you must put a sign with it. Is it a dog hospital? Do you make dog food? Do you make dog sausages? Or whatever. You know, you have to qualify that. Otherwise, there's no reason to make a drawing of a dog. Next, please. I often wonder, I saw these walls by the students piddling with all these different colors they were trying to put, with all these complexities. And yet, I kept reflecting on those Inca walls, how marvelous they are, how simple. There's something to think about it, isn't it? Yep. Let's reflect about this. The simplicity of very natural people and somebody who thought he was an artist. Next, please. Yep. You know what schizophrenia is? You know, the meaning of schizophrenia is pell-mell statements put together. Each statement in itself may have a valid meaning, but together they don't make sense enough to drive you nuts. Isn't it? Well, look at this. What is this? Is that a fish? Is that a plant? Or is it a bird? What is it? And this is done by actually a schizophrenic patient in the French hospital, a drawing by him. It's true. Well, look what in the past what they did. Yep. And there are a lot of people today, they're still doing those things. Next, please. Now, you remember I told you that everybody challenges me. I said, well, why can't I describe music? Remember that girl said, can you draw? This is what the painting told her, the music told her to draw. Wiggly lines, lines. And here I said, okay, let's experiment. And I played some Mozart, I played some Bach, and I said, why don't you draw that music? And this is one student's drawings. I have it all in my tapes. I don't even know which. It doesn't make any difference, really, whether it's Mozart or Bach or that, because we're all different. You wouldn't even know it anyway. Now, then they still kept arguing with me. And I said, okay, I'll whistle. Here I am. Why don't you draw that? And this is what they did. Now, the dog and daisy is because you will see a dog and daisy later on, which they saw in one of my lectures. They put that dog and daisy, but the rest of it is just this, you see. Does that really make my whistle? No. Next, please. Yeah? Amusement, huh? Go ahead. Next, please. Is that any different? Of course not. I remember Mario Pani, this is the administration building at the University of Mexico. I was a speaker when they opened this university, and Sequeiros I used to know in Los Angeles. He had one of the murals on Olivera Street in the back of one of the stores. And I used to know him. I used to know his wife, Blanca Luz, I believe it was her name. And he made this nonsense. You should see how awful it looks now anyway. But Mario Pani came in a few years later to visit me in Tiburon. And I said, Mario, what are you doing? He said, Soriano, estamos haciendo unos edificios grandes para el gobierno. He said, we are doing a big buildings for the government. You know what? The painters and sculptors are after us. We are putting cement blocks in the park and said, leave our buildings alone and paint those cement blocks. Yeah, that's what they did. And this is the UNESCO building, isn't it? Sad. Next. Sorry, but that's true. Huh? Well, that's what happens. Now, this is an interesting thing. I was in Neiman Marcus in Dallas, Texas. You see the ladies' shoes there, the shoe department? That's on the second floor. They were selling shoes for the ladies. And they had an Indian making sand drawings. I said to myself, my God. I said, what is this? And so that was the second floor over the carpet. He was making this. And I said to myself, it's really funny. This is a pure advertisement. Next, please. You'll see something. Okay, now, people did all kinds of drawings in the caves. If you were at that civilization, I'm sorry, backwards, it doesn't matter. But, you know, they used to draw this mythologically for their religious beliefs. Their concept of their culture, their thinking processes were involved very much with this kind of a thing. And this is the type of society. Okay, for them. But today it doesn't make sense. Next, please. You'll see something. Now, okay. The reason even today the Indians make drawings, if they are at that level of civilization, this was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I took these pictures. They were making sand drawings, but you notice not one artist. No. There were several of them collaborating together in the direction of the medicine men. These were coiled serpents. It was a medicinal administration. That's why they were doing the sand drawings, not to display on your wall or to be sold to a millionaire. No, sir. This is what they did. Sand, coiled serpents, and here is the sick man. Look at the coiled serpents there. You see? It was always ritualistic. Even today, this is good if you are at that level of civilization. Next. Okay? If you want to have fun, go ahead. Next, please. We are constantly contaminated with this. Now, Alvar Aalto came to Boston. Here's an old Boston building. And this is what he tried to imitate. You see this ondulation. And then he put this nonsense in front of it. How much more serious that is, even though